everybody. Welcome to the Top Time channel. Perhaps everyone knows the story of the ill-fated Titanic. But at the same time, few people even suspect that the case of the Titanic is only the third shipwreck in terms of the number of victims. History has known much larger ocean tragedies. These are the top 10 most famous and incredible shipwrecks. Let's go! 10. RMS Titanic. The Titanic was a British passenger liner that suffered a tragic fate during its maiden voyage in 1912. It is still considered one of the most infamous maritime disasters in history. On the night of April 14, 1912, 4 days after the start of her voyage, the Titanic collided with an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean. The iceberg punched a number of holes on the starboard side of the ship, as a result of which water flooded several compartments. The design flaw, due to which the ship could not stay afloat with more than 4 compartments flooded, turned out to be fatal. Despite flood control efforts and the launching of lifeboats, the fate of the ship was sealed. Early in the morning of April 15, 1912, the Titanic sank in the icy waters of the Atlantic. The lack of lifeboats and inadequate emergency procedures led to tragic loss of life. The disaster killed more than 1,500 people, making it one of the deadliest maritime tragedies in history. 9. RMS Republic. Far away, in the most dangerous area of the North Atlantic, just a few years before the almighty Titanic proved that there was no unsinkability, another passenger sank near Nantucket, RMS Republic. She plunged almost 300 feet into the shark-infested ocean and took with her an unimaginable treasure that would surpass any man's dreams. RMS Republic was a wonderful luxury liner, especially for its time. He set sail at the end of January 1909 and headed for the ports of the Mediterranean Sea, despite the fact that he got into a very thick fog. He kept to himself all night, but the next morning he collided with the ship SS Florida. The fierce blow that RMS Republic received from the SS Florida was fierce and destroyed the engine room, which led to a power cut to the liner. Incredibly, most of the passengers and crew were rescued, but 3 people died from each ship. SS Florida was saved, but RMS Republic sank deep on the ocean floor. At the moment, the Titanic had not sunk yet, and this ship was the most technologically advanced at that time, and was also considered unsinkable. Although lives were saved during this disaster, no cargo was so lucky. Everything was lost at sea, and there was no way to get it back. 8. RMS Lusitania. RMS Lusitania was a British passenger liner that was sunk by a German submarine on May 7, 1915 during the First World War. The ship was en route from New York to Liverpool and carried 1,959 passengers and crew, of whom 1,198 died. His life and tragedy. The sinking of the Lusitania was a significant event in the history of the war and had far-reaching consequences for the conflict and for the world as a whole. The Lusitania was considered one of the largest and most luxurious ocean liners of its time and was a symbol of British naval power and prestige. On the afternoon of May 7, 1915, as the ship was approaching the coast of Ireland, it was hit by a torpedo fired from a German submarine. The ship sank in just 18 minutes, only 761 people survived. 7. USS Arizona. The attack took place at dawn on December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor was carelessly sleeping when squadrons of enemy aircraft approached from the north and launched 2 lightning attacks, the first 7:53 to 8:15, the second 9 to 9:20. The battleship USS Arizona was destroyed already at the 13th minute of the first attack. On average, about 300 Japanese bombers and 40 torpedo bombers participated in the attack. On the approach to the American naval base, they split into groups in accordance with combat missions. Dive bombers attacked airfields, and torpedo bombers from both sides of the Fort Island. After 8:04, the battleship USS Arizona was hit by 5 bombs. One of them bounced off the barrel of the gun. Soon the battleship exploded. The flame shot up to 240 meters. This fire was visible on the hospital ship's hulls. Underwater research has shown that there is no reason to believe that torpedoes were inflicted. Physical evidence proves that an aircraft bomb hit the battleship because there is a film that captures the explosion. After conducting a digital analysis of the film taken by the doctor, a group of specialists concluded that the only bomb dropped from the bomber pierced the deck and hit the forward powder magazine, where the ship's ammunition was stored. The explosion detonated the battleship. A chain of explosions struck compartment after compartment, causing the destruction that can be seen today. Admiral Isaac Keith of the battleship squadron was killed in the explosion, as were the other 1,176 crew members. All that was left of him was his graduation ring from the Naval Academy, which was fused into the side of the ship. The fire raged for 3 days. The ship was completely destroyed. 6. The Mary Rose. On July 19, 1545, King Henry VIII of England Tudor, standing on the wall of the coastal castle of Soleil, watched his fleet leave to meet the approaching French squadron. The king's favorite flagship, the updated Mary Rose, headed the formation of ships of the Royal Navy. Mary Rose, so he was named after the king's beloved sister, Mary. The ship, recently rebuilt and rearmed, symbolized the king's power at sea. Flags and numerous pennants flew proudly over the sea, and the weapons and armor of naval soldiers glittered on the decks. Smoke drifted from the wicks of the ship's guns and handgrips. Suddenly, the king's entourage screamed loudly, thus expressing their grief and disappointment. The flagship, which was in front and had already approached the enemy, performing a U-turn, suddenly tilted after only a few minutes and set sail on the water. Another 10 minutes and barrels, pieces of wood, and the heads of a few swimmers were swaying on the surface of the water. Unexpectedly deprived of its most powerful ship, the English fleet, having picked up the survivors, lost its fighting impulse and returned to Portsmouth Harbor. However, the enemy, seeing the power of the British, did not dare to continue the attack and slowly marched along the coast and went home. So, the ship lying on the seabed was able to prevent the invasion of the enemy by its ridiculous death. But this was not the last milestone in the fate of the ship. So, in order. 5. Vesa. The path of any ship begins with its construction, followed by launching, and then hiking on the seas and oceans. The 17th century Swedish sailing ship Vasa is unique. It sank on the day of its solemn launching, lay at the bottom for more than 3 centuries, and at the end of the 19th century became one of the world's most famous tourist attractions. The sailing ship got its name Vasa in honor of the ruling dynasty of the Swedish kings. Vasa was the largest warship of the early 17th century in Europe, with a mast 52.5 m high and 69 m long, and a stern height of almost 20 meters. It was decorated with hundreds of painted and gilded statues and more than 700 different figures, and there were 64 cannons on board. The whole of Europe watched the construction with curiosity. And so, on August 10, 1628, the ship was launched. Joyful residents of Stockholm gathered on the embankment. But the holiday did not work out. Built using the most advanced technologies, and the personal pride of the king, the Vasa ship was launched. He moved towards the sea, spread his sails, walked along the island of Kastelholmen 1,300 meters, but he never left the harbor. The impressive warship began to list, and quickly sank to the bottom with all the guns and a crew of about 100 people. Later it turned out that no ballast was reported to the keel, so the ship turned out to be unstable. 4. The Queen Anne's Revenge. There has always been a debate around pirate adventures. What is true and what is fiction? Many things are still hidden under a veil of mystery and obscurity, but there are also some that historians have managed to find. These few unique items include Blackbeard's flagship, Queen Anne's Revenge. More than 2.5 centuries ago, the flagship, the pirate ship Queen Anne's Revenge, sank off the coast of North Carolina. Edward Teach, the captain of the ship, left it with his crew in June 1718. Edward Teach, nicknamed Blackbeard, was a dashing captain of sea robbers. When his crew began boarding, the captain calmly smoked and passed wisps of smoke through his beard, creating a demonic image of the sea devil. He hoped that the captains of the ships, out of fear, would surrender to him without a fight. But a captain without a ship is nonsense. 3. MV Dona Paz. The MV Dona Paz's official manifest listed only 1,493 passengers and 60 crew members, but it was the holiday season, and thousands more illegal passengers boarded the ferry to get home by Christmas. The ferry was understaffed and operated without a license. They had no radio, no surveillance, no qualified captain. Before the sinking, a few witnesses reported that most of the crew were having a holiday party and that only one person, unattended, was serving on the bridge at that time. The passengers either hid or bought illegal tickets from the ferry operator. Children were often allowed on board without a ticket. The upper decks, corridors and bunks were packed with people trying to fall asleep and pass the time. People literally piled on top of each other. Some bunks accommodated up to 5 people while the ship cruised through the waters between the numerous islands of the archipelago. No one expected what happened next. On December 19, 1987, the oil tanker Vector left Limay and headed for Masbate. The tanker was carrying 8,800 barrels, 1.05 million liters, of oil and other petroleum products. Vector was a relatively small cargo ship, 170 feet long and 38 feet wide, designed to transport petroleum products across the Philippines. A day later, at about 22:30 local time, Vector collided with MV Dona Paz in the waters of the Tublas Strait. The collision immediately caused an explosion, as a result of which the cargo on board the Vector caught fire. Soon, thousands of barrels of oil caught fire and poured into the sea, flooding the decks of both ships. 2. The Black Swan. The Black Swan Project or Black Swan Project is recognized as the best restoration of the Golden State in history. The condition was found on the remaining parts of the Spanish warship Nuestra Señora de las Mercedes, which sailed to the shores of Portugal in 1804. In 2007, the American organization Odyssey Marine Exploration reported that it had discovered gold worth an expected $500 million, $314 million US. In any case, the Spanish government claimed that they had legitimately claimed the gold, and the case went to the US Supreme Court only for the gold to be returned to Spanish experts in 2012, where it is currently on display in various presentations across the country. This is one of the most famous shipwrecks in the world. 1. MS World Discoverer. The World Discoverer was a small cruise ship with big plans. It was specially created narrow enough, 15 meters, so that the ship could pass through narrow rivers and straits, opening previously unexplored places to travelers, including the South Pole and the Amazon. But it was the unexplored treacherous waters that left him forever in his domain. Our hero was designed and built in Germany in 1974. Due to bankruptcy, the original owner had to sell the ship, which then changed hands several more times. The vessel had a double hull and was assigned Ice Class 1A specifically for sailing to the polar regions of Antarctica. Passengers could observe the movement of ice floes and icebergs, even approach them on inflatable boats, of which World Discoverer had a whole stock. Unfortunately, the life of the ship was short-lived. On April 30, 2000, World Discoverer damaged the hull on an uncharted reef in the Sandfly Strait in the Solomon Islands. Captain Oliver Crest sent a distress signal, which was received in Honiara, the capital of the islands. The passenger ferry that arrived at the scene saved all the passengers of the World Discoverer, and the ship itself, which began to list, was stranded by the captain in Roderick Bay to avoid flooding. Stay tuned for Top Time updates for future releases, where we will delve into fascinating lists and reveal the extraordinary in the ordinary.